right. So this video, what we are going to do is we are going to take the stuff that we've done already, specifically with the goals overlay stuff. So the stuff where we talk about getting goals and adding goals and then showing goals, just editing, deleting, all of that. We are going to extend this functionality to instead of just being a chat experience where you add a goal and then you type in exclamation point goals and then it's like spits out the list of goals in the chat. What we're going to do is we are going to extend this to now show the list of goals, specifically whenever we type in exclamation point goals in the chat. We are going to extend this to now show on the stream overlay. So what we're going to do is we are first going to build a basic stream overlay. Then we're going to use what's called sockets to connect the bot and the overlay together so that they can talk to each other. And sockets, you can think about sockets in the same way that you can think about like a pipe that allows you to send data from one place to another. Or you can look at it as like, I'm probably showing my age here, but you can look at a socket similar to how you used to, as a kid, take two tin cans and tie them together with a string and then pull the string really tight. And then you could talk into one of the cans and hear it on the other side. That's basically the idea of a socket. And a socket can go either one way or two ways. So in this case, we are only going to have the socket go in one direction. We're going to have the socket send, like receive data from the bot and then send the data to the overlay. And then once it's received on the overlay, it's going to run a bit of JavaScript and then display the overlay on the screen and then leave it there for a few seconds and then remove it. So something that I forgot to put in on this design documentation here is we are going to be using two APIs here. So first, we're going to be using something called socket.io, and that's what's going to allow us to create the sockets themselves. And we're also going to use something called Express. Now, Express is a API that allows you to take a Node.js program, which is what we're building this bot in, and turn it into a local web server. So we can store and display web pages through a Express server. So the bot is now going to double as a little server that's going to allow us to host the overlay and then be able to get it into OBS and then do something with it. So I suppose first thing that we need to do is to create the overlay itself. So we're going to create a few folders within our source directory. First thing that we're going to create is a folder, and you don't have to do it like this. This is just how I'm choosing to do it because it's going to make, keeping things organized a bit easier. So we're going to create a new folder in the source directory called HTML. And then within the HTML folder, we are going to create a HTML file. We are going to call this, typically you call your main page for any kind of website index.html, but you don't have to do that for this, but sticking with convention, I'm just going to call it the index.html. So we're in the HTML folder. We're going to create a new file called index.html. And also in the HTML folder, we are going to create another folder. And we're going to call it CSS. And this is where, naturally, our CSS files are going to live. And within the CSS folder, we're going to create a style sheet. And we're going to call this default.css. again, you can name this anything you want, but I'm choosing to call it default because one of the things that we're going to be doing later is we are going to attempt to dynamically change the CSS that the overlay is using, but I want a default template to work with at first. So that's why I'm calling it default. So, with all of this stuff created, what we're going to do is we are going to first create a link between our HTML page and our CSS. Now, also, you may be wondering why we are creating a HTML and CSS page or files whenever we're talking about making a overlay for OBS. So the reason for that is that unless you're familiar with OBS already and how overlays work, the reason that we're doing it this way is because all the overlays in some way or another are essentially just transparent web pages that are sized to the appropriate size that we want them, that we then, as the name implies, overlay on top of the video that we have going through OBS. And typically, the video that you would be having going through OBS would be a game. But in this case, you're seeing my IDE. So, like, just the video as a whole, like, things are overlaid on top of that. And the way that we do it is through transparent web pages that we then just like stack in various ways and position in various ways. So that's why we're doing this in this way, because it's easier and it's just typically the best way to do this within OBS. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to link our our CSS to the HTML page. So we're going to create a relation of a style sheet. And for those of you that are not terribly familiar with HTML, I will at some point be creating a fundamentals series on HTML in the same way that I created the fundamental series on JavaScript. So do look forward to that. So what we're going to do is we are going to say, so we're saying that we need a relation of a style sheet, and this is going to be in the format or the type of a CSS file. And to get there, we need to go to the CSS folder / the default.css file. So that's how that works. So now we have the CSS file just connected to the HTML file. Now, if you're wondering what a CSS file is, all that is, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And what that basically allows us to do is it allows us to create all of the basic styling and visual appeal of the things that we do within web pages. Most of that is done within CSS. So then you don't really need to worry about this or this in this particular case. The character set is just telling the computer like what characters are available for us to use. What's like letters and numbers and symbols and whatever are available for us to use. And then the title here is if we were to actually go to the web page itself, this would be the title that comes up in the tab. So we don't need to worry about that. So within the body, what we're going to do is we are going to create a div, which is essentially a transparent, well, not a transparent, it's a box. A div in HTML is just a box that allows you to put data in it. And we're sticking this in the body of the HTML file. And so within this block, what we're going to do is we are going to put everything that we are going to do within this overlay, within this block. And then we're going to essentially put everything else within this block. And you'll understand as we go along. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this an ID. And IDs are what allow the CSS file to interact with the basic blocks within our HTML file. So there's two ways that you can do this. You can have an ID, which is what we have here, and an ID has to be unique. So if you try and get more than one tag and the same ID, you'll get conflicts and things will break. So if you wanted to have something that could be used multiple times, you would change this ID to the word class. And this will allow you to have a thing that is long as you have everything that you want to have the same styling with the same class, it'll be formatted the same way. But in this case, we only want this thing to be styled in a specific way. So we want to have an ID. And so we're going to call this ID the wrapper. And just so you know, the matter wrapper. And so what this is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to go to the CSS file and then say, well, what do I want to do with this ID? And so in order to have the CSS and the HTML talk to each other, you need to create a tag in the same way that you do in the HTML, also in CSS. So in order to say that you're working with an ID, you start off with the pound sign, or if you're not sure what a pound sign is, hashtag. So IDs start off with hashtags. Classes start off with a period. So in this case, we're working with an ID, so we're going to use a hashtag. And you'll notice that this looks very similar to a JSON object, so the way that JSON objects work, because it's essentially the same thing, but it has its own bit of values and keys and values that this will allow. So what we're going to do is we want to have the background color of the wrapper be transparent so that whenever we go and apply this overlay to OBS, it's not going to be just a white screen that's covering everything else. It'll just be transparent. So the way that we do that is we say background color and we want it to be transparent. And it is legit that easy. And you end it with a semicolon, just like you would in JavaScript. All right, now that we have the CSS set up and connected to the HTML page, the next thing that we should probably do is actually get this connected to the actual bot. Actually, let's do something else first. Let's have a bit of test data is shown. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a new div with the ID of hello, right? And we are going to just put in the words, oh, hi, chat, right here. And what we're going to do is we are going to go into our CSS. We're going to create the new hello tag. And we want the background color to be, let's see what kind of silver color. Let's have it silver. And then let's have the height of this be, let's say, 480 pixels. So at 480 pixels, the pixels you do with px. Sorry, I wanted the width to be 480 pixels. No, sorry, to the width as 600. So 600 pixels. 100 by 480. That's like 4 by 3, isn't it? Yeah, good old 4 by 3 back in the day. And I'm sure somebody is triggered that I didn't put the width before the height, so let's just fix that. All right. So now what we're going to do is we are going to go back to our bot, and we are going to add in a few more libraries to be able to use to make this stuff work. So what we need to do is we need to first install the Express package. So in the same way that we've done this before, we are going to go to our terminal, and using the node package manager, we are going to say npm install express and then dash save. I know it's kind of hard to see, but there's npm install express and space, then 2 dashes, and then the word save. Hit enter, and it's going to install this for us and also put it into our package.json file. And considering that my hard drive is crashing and trying to kill itself for no reason, this might take a minute, but just give it some time. I will have an SSD soon, TM. Okay, I'll update my NPM whenever this is done. How did I get so far behind on my NPM? Jeez, what happened? Okay, so the same way that we did Express. So Express is going to allow us to create a little web server out of our bot as well, which is going to allow us to push the web page or host to the web page so that OBS can actually get to it. So in order to connect the bot to the page, so Express just hosts the page. It doesn't connect the page to the bot. So in order to connect the bot to the page, we need to install socket.io. So same way that we install Express, we need to install socket.io. So npm install socket.io dash save, and just give it a minute and it'll pull this from the npm library and then slap it into your package.json. And while I'm here, I will also go and move into the source folder that whenever we need to run the bot, we can do. So, all right, now that we've done all that, what we're going to do is we are going to go to the top of our bot file and we are going to import a few things. So first, we are going to import Express. So like we've done with the other libraries before this, create a constant and call it the name of the library. We're pulling in our API. We're pulling in. You don't have to call it the same thing as the API or the library, but it makes sense. So we require with an argument of the library name, in this case, Express. And then we will also create a app from this. Actually, I'll do that in a second. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to import socket.io. So in this case, since it's not allowed, it's not a valid variable name to have a period in a variable name, we are just going to call the socket.io variable the just io. And in the same way, we are going to require the socket.io package. Now, there is a little bit of extra stuff that we need to do in order to make the socket.io package work. In order to do that, we need to set up the Express server. In order to do that, we're going to need to create a few more constants right before we pull in the socket.io package. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to first create a new Express server. And conventionally, you will call your Express server just app. So if you want to stick with convention, just call it an app. In order to just create a new Express server, you just call Express, so this, with no arguments. That's it. And then we need to create a server within this. And this will make sense, once we set up the socket stuff. What we're going to do is we're going to put another constant. We're going to call this server. And this is going to require the basic HTTP package that comes with Node. So this is going to allow us to make HTTP requests. So GET requests, post requests, so on and so forth. In this case, we're only going to need a GET request in order to host the web page. That's going to be our overlay. And then once this is created, we're going to say dot create server, and then we're going to pass in the Express server as the argument. And then once we create the server, we can then connect the server to the sockets. In order to do that, you just create another argument right here, and you pass in the server. So what's going on is we are pulling in the Express library first. And then once we pull in the Express library, we create an Express app. Within the Express app, we create a server that is feeding into the app. And then we create a socket or set of sockets that then feeds into the server. So hopefully that makes sense. So now we need to set up some basic stuff for the bot, or sorry, for the server itself. What we need to do is all the way at the bottom of our stuff, what we need to do is we need to set up the logic that's going to, at first, pull in the files from our HTTP folder and then be able to host them and distribute them. So what we're going to do is we're going to say app. So within the app, we need to use the folder. So this is a function, and so within this, it just takes a single argument, and which is in this case a folder. And so we're going to use the HTTP folder that is within the source folder that this bot is in. So because this is just a static file, we're going to use the express command called static. So this just serves a, set of stuff within this area of the program or the folder directory. So what we're going to do is we're going to say underscore underscore your name. So what this is your name is a reserved keyword. Pretty sure it's a express reserved keyword that provides a absolute path. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it creates an absolute path to the folder that the program is currently running in. So it's not relying on the relative path, which could possibly mess things up. It's giving an absolute path to the directory that the bot is currently in, which turns out to be a string. So then we add to that string the slash HTML. So the slash. I'm sure you've seen in a folder directory before or on a website where it says, if you're looking at a folder directory, it says C // program files / documents / something else. So what this is the full directory up until we reach the bot. And then we need to go further into the folder structure. So we say /HTML. So then what we're going to do is we are going to have the server start up, and we're going to have the server be listening on a specific port so that whenever we go to the correct IP address for this particular web server, we'll know where to go. So like whenever you're looking at a IP, especially on the internet, you're dealing with various ports. And so if you've ever seen an IP address, what it typically looks like is 1.0.0.168. Wait, 1.0.1. I just butchered that. And then you have give me a proper IP. That's not it. And then you have a colon with the port. So fun fact, the port number for the internet is 80. And then for a local server like this, the port number is traditionally 3000. And so, but considering that I have a bunch of work stuff running on port 3000 already, I'm not going to use 3000s because I don't want to create any conflicts with my work stuff. So what I'm going to do is I am going to use port 4000. It's going to create a little bit more typing for us in the long run, but it's okay. So this listen command takes two arguments. We're going to put a port, in this case 4000, and then we're going to put in a callback function. So the callback function is simply there to have something happen whenever we are done booting up the server. So in this case, we are just going to put out to the console log that server is started. Server is started. Server is started. Have fun. Now, the last thing that we need to do is we need to make the website, or I shouldn't say website, we should make the overlay available to a address, the web address that will then host or display, to display the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a get call that once this address is called, it will display the page that is requested from this address. So the first thing to do is you define the address that you want the file to be sent from. So like if you just go to like www.google.com, that displays a specific page that's being sent from the address google.com. And so what that is that's essentially the home directory of Google. Let's see, Smeagol, thank you for that 100 bits there. Really do appreciate it. You're generous. But anyway, so what that does, so whenever you go to google.com, what you're doing is you are hitting the home directory of Google. And whenever you're dealing with directories on a website like this, the home directory is indicated by just simply saying slash. So you have a string and then forward slash. This is the home directory of Google. So what this does is it allows us to just go straight to, in our case, localhost. And localhost, whenever you start a server like this, is the reserved keyword that just allows you to get to a certain page on your computer from the server that's being run. So the get command takes two arguments. It takes the address for the directory that you're going to, then it takes a function, a callback function. And this callback function takes two arguments. It takes a request argument and it takes a response argument. So in our case, we really only need the response argument because once we make a request to this page, all we're doing is we're just sending a response. And the way that you do that, in this case, is you say response dot send file, and then this takes a single argument of the directory name plus the remainder of the file path plus the file itself. So in this case, it's email slash index dot email. And that should set everything up that we need in order to actually display the overlay on the screen in OBS. And now that we've got the server set up and ready to go and ready to provide and host and present the web pages, in this case the overlay, what we're going to do is we are going to start up the bot, and then we are going to go into OBS and we are going to put a new overlay element in OBS and then see how it works. So we're going to say node bot and get the bot running. We know that it's running. Whenever it says server is started, have fun. We have succeeded in that regard. So now in OBS, what we're going to do is you're going to see a hall of silvers. We are going to create a new overlay or a new element, a new scene source. So what we're going to do is we are going to go into sources. We're going to add a source. We're going to add a browser source. Okay. And we're just going to call this silverbot overlay. Okay. You're going to get this menu right here. Just for our purposes, let's have this overlay take the whole screen. So in my case, it's 1920 by 1080. And we are going to have the URL. This is going to be a URL. And it's going to be http:// local host. This is a reserved address for getting to a website that you're hosting on your own computer. So this is just a standard thing. And then colon, and then 4000. Because you remember that whenever we had set up the port number, we had it set up in such a way where it would go on port 4000. If you use the default port of 3000, all you have to do is just do an http:// localhost. That's it. But because I have other things running on port 3000 that will conflict with my software job, I'm using 4000. So you hit OK, and then look at that. We have a gray box with it's super small, the text of "Oh hi chat" sitting in box. So let's actually make this a little bit more visible. So let's go back to the actual software development page or scene in OBS, and we'll minimize this, and we'll go to our CSS file, and let's add in another thing for hello. Let's put in font size, and let's say we want it to be 64 pixels, nice and big. And then we'll just add in the browser source again so we can see it on this page. So we find it, It's already created it. We should be able to do it here. And then there you go. Well, I have to turn off the bot and restart it. So for this to work, so close the bot, turn the overlay off as well, and then restart the bot so I can push out to the newest stuff. All right. And then grab this. That should have worked, but it didn't. But the idea is still there. We have created a overlay that is connected to the bot that is being hosted on our bot that is also being pushed out to the OBS overlay. So I am very curious as to why the font size doesn't work. So but let's see if we can't figure that out really quick. So let me turn off this overlay and let's go with the, let's just do a little bit of Googling. So pull up our Chrome. We will do a CSS. This is how you learn stuff in software. So I will do it real time. Software development is nothing more than a whole bunch of creative Googling. So CSS font size. CSS font size, W3 Schools. Also, W3 Schools is probably your best friend for learning things, relating to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Like, stuff is amazing. Yeah, I'm doing it correctly. So there's got to be something going on. The font size, 40 pixels. Let's try it with EM. Combination of percent and EM. Font size. Okay, let's go 100%. See if that works. 100%. All right. Let's also change in our overlay thing that here, I'll switch back to this. So also check whenever you're using this that the shut down the source when it's not visible. So it'll do a full reload. So go. Let's shut down the server. Let's put down the overlay. Let's go back to our this. Okay. Let's start up the overlay and start the bot again. And we will put the overlay. Why does that not work? Okay. Let's pull in try in EM 5%. So, all right. And there we go. I just had to use EM. So EM is just another way of sizing things in CSS. You can use pixels, you can use percentages, you can use EM, and that's how you do it. So in this case, it looks like our particular setup doesn't like sizing things with pixels or percentages. With font size, it seems to prefer it with EM. So perhaps a little bit of a quirk that we will have to deal with. But that is how we get things set up with having the bot connected to, doubling as a server, and then also hosting the overlay. We've created the overlay itself and connected it to a CSS file, and we've been able to push it to the overlay within OBS. Next, we are going to use the Socket.io library/API that we imported earlier. You notice that we didn't actually use it in this video. We're going to use it in the next video, so stay tuned, where we will create a way for chat to be able to control the overlay in certain ways. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching.